General Nam Q stood before a holographic map that showed the entire galaxy. Red zones marked alien territories that were still hostile to humanity. Yellow zones showed species that had declared neutrality. Green zones indicated worlds that had formally surrendered to human authority. The map was changing color rapidly. "Status report," he ordered his staff. Colonel Lee Ha stepped forward with her tablet. "The Valari Empire has lost 60% of their fleet. They're requesting immediate peace talks. The Quanti Collective has completely fractured. Individual worlds are declaring independence from the hive mind and asking for human protection. The Etherian Council is maintaining neutrality, but has offered to mediate negotiations." "What about the smaller species?" "Most have already surrendered. The Zephyrin Republic formally handed over their government to human administrators yesterday. The Corvin Federation is evacuating their military bases and converting them to civilian use. Even the Nexus pirates have stopped raiding human shipping and are apparently looking for legitimate work." Nam Q studied the map with the practiced eye of someone who had spent 40 years planning for this exact situation. "And the holdouts?" "The Draconic hegemony still refuses to acknowledge human authority. They're claiming this is all some kind of elaborate illusion. The Titan worlds are mobilizing their remaining forces for what they're calling a final stand against human tyranny. And the Void Reapers have disappeared entirely. We think they're planning some kind of desperate attack." Nam Q nodded grimly. There were always a few species that had to learn the hard way. The Draconic hegemony had been one of the most arrogant civilizations in the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their dragon-like appearance and ancient culture had convinced them that they were natural rulers of the stars. When reports of human military capabilities reached their homeworld, the Dragon Emperor Sharthax had dismissed them as obvious lies. "Impossible," he declared to his war council. "We have observed humans for decades. They are weak, short-lived creatures with primitive technology. These reports of vast hidden fleets and advanced weapons are clearly propaganda designed to frighten us into submission." His military advisor, General Korthak, was not so sure. "Your Majesty, we have lost contact with several of our border colonies. Our intelligence networks in alien space have gone completely silent, and our spies report that human ships are appearing in places where no ships should be able to go." "Then send a fleet to investigate," the Emperor commanded. "Show these humans what happens when they threaten the Draconic hegemony." The fleet that departed for human space was impressive by any standard. 200 warships, including the massive dreadnought Pride of Dragons, with enough firepower to crack a planet. The dragons expected to sweep through human territory and force an immediate surrender. They never made it to the first human world. Captain Beck Jin commanded the human vessel Hidden Tiger, one of Dr. Shin's newest designs. To dragon sensors, it appeared to be empty space. Not even a ship, just a small gravitational anomaly that their computers automatically filtered out. The Hidden Tiger and 50 ships like it had been waiting in the void between stars for exactly this kind of target. "Dragon fleet has entered the system," reported his sensor officer. 200 ships, moving in standard formation toward New Gyeongju. Baek Jin smiled. Standard formation was exactly what humans had hoped the dragons would. Signal the fleet, begin Operation Sleeping Dragon. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The dragon fleet simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not captured, just gone. One moment they were there, the next moment they were not. On the dragon homeworld, Emperor Sharthax stared at his communication screens in disbelief. "What do you mean, gone?" "Your Majesty," his communications officer replied nervously, "we lost contact with the entire fleet simultaneously. All ships, all personnel, complete communications blackout. Then send another fleet to find them." "Your Majesty, we don't have another fleet. That was our entire mobile navy." The truth was that the Dragon fleet was not destroyed. Captain Baek Jin's ships had used a new type of weapon that simply made things disappear. Not vaporized, not exploded, just relocated to a different part of space where they could not cause any trouble. Dr. Shin had been very proud of the displacement field generators. Much more humane than traditional weapons, he had explained to Admiral Park. Instead of killing our enemies, we just put them somewhere else. They'll eventually find their way home, but it might take them a few years. The Titan worlds chose a different approach. Instead of sending fleets to attack human space, they decided to make their homeworld into an impregnable fortress. The Titans were massive creatures, each one the size of a small building, and their worlds were protected by defensive systems that had never been breached. "Let the humans come," declared Titan Lord Bramos as he watched defensive batteries power up around his world. "We have stood against every threat the galaxy has produced. We will not bow to a species of small, weak mammals." His confidence lasted until human ships appeared in orbit around his world. Not attacking, not threatening, just waiting. "What are they doing?" he asked his military advisors. "Unknown, Lord Bramos. They're not firing, not moving, just maintaining position above our atmosphere." "Then destroy them." The Titan defensive systems opened fire with enough energy to sterilize continents. Massive beam weapons, planet-killing missiles, gravity bombs that could crush mountains. The human ship simply absorbed all of it without seeming to notice. Commander O-Min was watching the show from the bridge of the human vessel. Gentle persuasion. "Titan defensive systems are impressive," she noted to her crew. "Very dramatic. Lots of bright lights and loud noises." "Shall we respond, Commander?" asked her weapons officer. "In a moment. First, let them use up all their ammunition. I'd hate for them to hurt themselves with their own weapons." When the Titan defensive systems finally went silent, out of power and out of ammunition, Commander O opened a communication channel to the planet below. "Titan Lord Bramos, this is Commander O-Min of the Terran Defense Force. We've been very impressed with your defensive display. Very energetic, very colorful. We particularly enjoyed the part where you tried to hit us with a gravity bomb. That was adorable." How are you still alive?" Bramos stammered. "Oh, that's easy. Our shields are better than your weapons. Now we need to discuss your immediate surrender. We have some very nice relocation options available for your people." "Never. Titans do not surrender, Commander." O sighed. "I was hoping you'd say that. Please observe your moon." Bramos looked up at his world's moon, a massive satellite that had orbited his planet for millions of years. As he watched, the moon began to change shape. Slowly, carefully, human technology reshaped the entire satellite into a perfect sculpture of a human hand, making a rude gesture. "That moon weighs approximately 7 trillion tons, Commander O explained helpfully. "We moved it just to show you that we could. If you would prefer, we could drop it on your planet instead. Or we could turn it into a sculpture of your face. Or we could make it spell out rude words in your language. We're very flexible." The Titans surrendered immediately. But it was the Void Reapers who provided the most dramatic lesson in why species should not try to fight humanity. The Reapers were an ancient race that had survived by hiding in the dark spaces between stars and striking without warning. They were feared throughout the galaxy as the one species that could not be negotiated with, could not be reasoned with, and could not be defeated. Their plan was simple: attack Earth itself, kill the human homeworld, and the rest of the human empire would collapse. Supreme Reaper Vorthol led the assault personally, commanding a fleet of invisible ships that could phase through normal matter and strike from dimensions that other species could not even perceive. They had used these tactics to destroy hundreds of civilizations over the millennia. They were completely unprepared for what they found when they reached Earth. Dr. Kim Hana had been expecting them. In fact, she had been tracking their movements through dimensions that the Reapers thought were secret. Human scientists had been studying multidimensional physics for decades, and they had developed some very interesting applications. "Void Reaper, fleet detected," she reported to Admiral Park from her monitoring station. 300 ships approaching through the 7th dimensional fold. "Are you sure they're planning to attack Earth?" "Oh yes. They're being very dramatic about it. Lots of threatening speeches in their ancient language. Something about harvesting the source of human power and feeding on the fear of their homeworld. Very theatrical. Can you stop them?" Dr. Kim smiled. "Admiral, I've been looking forward to this for 20 years. Human children have nightmares about the Void Reapers. Time to show them that the Reapers should have nightmares about us. What happened next was later described by Elder Morden as the most polite military defeat in galactic history. The Void Reaper fleet emerged from their dimensional hiding place, expecting to find a defenseless blue world populated by helpless humans. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by human ships that should not have been able to exist in the same dimensional space. President O-Young stood on the observation deck of the Terran Protectorate headquarters, a massive space station that had been built where the old Galactic Council station once orbited. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from across the galaxy arriving and departing, all flying under the blue flag of the Human Protectorate. 6 months had passed since the galaxy learned what humanity was truly capable of. 6 months since the old order collapsed and a new one rose to take its place. The universe was a very different place now. "Madam President," came the voice of her aide, Secretary Park Min. "The morning briefing is ready." O-Young, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen the rise and fall of empires, nodded and made her way to the briefing room. The walls displayed real-time information from across known space. Shipping routes operating under human protection, alien worlds transitioning to protectorate governance, former enemies building new lives under human oversight. "Status of the former Velari Empire?" she asked as she took her seat. "Complete integration proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Admiral Park June via holographic communication from his flagship. "Commander Thexera has proven surprisingly effective at implementing protectorate policies. Her people respond well to her leadership and she understands the consequences of failure." The Quanti situation? Dr. Lim Su's image appeared on another screen. "Individual worlds are adapting to independent governance with minimal difficulties. We've established education programs to help former hive mind members develop individual identity and critical thinking skills. Some communities have chosen to maintain limited collective consciousness, but as a choice rather than compulsion. Resistance movements?" General Nam Q's scarred face appeared on a third screen. "Effectively non-existent. The Titan worlds attempted one last uprising 3 weeks ago. We resolved it by temporarily relocating their capital city to the other side of their planet. No casualties, but a very clear message. They've been much more cooperative since then." O-Young reviewed the reports with the efficiency of someone who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. The transition to human governance had been remarkably smooth, considering they had essentially conquered most of the known galaxy in less than a year. "What about the integration programs?" "Proceeding excellently," reported Ambassador Jiang Wu from his office on the station. "Most alien species are discovering that life under the Protectorate is significantly better than their previous governments. We've eliminated interspecies warfare, established universal trade standards, and implemented galaxy-wide infrastructure improvements. Crime rates have dropped by 90%. Economic productivity is up across all sectors." The truth was that humans had not simply conquered the galaxy, they had improved it. The old system of constant warfare, trade disputes, and territorial conflicts had been replaced by something that actually worked. Engineer Cho Min had been tasked with upgrading alien infrastructure to human standards. "The construction projects are moving faster than expected," she reported from her mobile command center. "Alien engineering is surprisingly compatible with our technology once we remove the inefficiencies. The Velari had been building their ships wrong for centuries. We've shown them how to improve their designs by about 400%. This was perhaps the most humbling aspect of humanity's victory. They had not just defeated alien civilizations. They had demonstrated that those civilizations had been doing almost everything wrong for thousands of years. Dr. Shin Wook had been working with alien scientists to upgrade their technology. "It's fascinating," he explained during his weekly report. "Most species reached a certain level of advancement and then just stopped. They became satisfied with good enough instead of pushing for as good as possible. In 6 months, we've helped them make technological leaps that would have taken them centuries on their own." But the most dramatic changes were happening in alien society itself. Species that had been locked in ancient patterns of behavior for millennia were suddenly free to explore new possibilities. The former draconic hegemony provided the best example. Emperor Sharthax had been removed from power and replaced by a council of dragons who actually understood economics and social policy. Under human guidance, they had transformed their empire from a feudal monarchy into a prosperous trade federation. "It's remarkable," reported Councillor Ha Yan, who had been assigned to oversee the dragon transition. "Once they stopped spending all their resources on maintaining their ancient majesty and started focusing on improving their people's lives, their civilization advanced more in 6 months than it had in the previous 1,000 years." The dragons were not alone. Across the galaxy, alien species were discovering that the human approach to governance, technology, and social organization simply worked better than anything they had tried before. But perhaps the most important change was happening in the minds of individual aliens. For the first time in their history, they were learning to think beyond the limitations their own cultures had imposed on them. Dr. Lim Su's educational programs were having profound effects. "We're not trying to make aliens into humans," he explained to President O during one of their regular meetings. "We're trying to help them become the best versions of themselves. Most species had tremendous potential that was simply never developed, because their societies discouraged individual achievement or creative thinking. The results spoke for themselves. Alien art, literature, music, and philosophy were experiencing a renaissance as individuals discovered they were free to express ideas that had been forbidden under their old governments. Scientific research was advancing at unprecedented rates, as alien scientists learned to question assumptions that had been considered unchangeable facts. Even the most dangerous species were finding new purposes under human guidance. The Void Reapers, once the terror of the galaxy, had been given a choice: serve the Protectorate as deep space scouts, or remain in their dimensional prison forever. Most had chosen service, and their unique abilities were proving invaluable for exploring the unknown regions beyond mapped space. "They're actually quite pleasant once you get to know them," reported Captain Beck Jin, who commanded a joint Human Reaper exploration fleet. "Their dimensional phasing abilities are perfect for investigating dangerous phenomena that would destroy normal ships. And they seem to genuinely enjoy having a purpose beyond just consuming everything." But not everyone was happy with the new order. Elder Morden of the Void Watchers found himself in an unusual position. His species had been granted protected status as one of the few alien civilizations that had tried to warn the galaxy about humanity's true nature. But protection came with a price. "We are honored guests in our own homes," he explained to Gentar as they walked through their ancient archives. "Humans treat us with respect and kindness. They protect us from those who might wish us harm. They provide us with resources and technology beyond our wildest dreams." "But," Gentar prompted, "but we are no longer free. Oh, they don't restrict our movements or tell us what to think. But we all understand that our continued existence depends entirely on human goodwill. We are pets, Gentar. Very well treated pets, but pets nonetheless." This was the reality that every alien species now faced. They lived comfortable, prosperous lives under human protection. They were free to pursue their own interests and develop their own cultures. But they all understood that this freedom existed only because humanity allowed it. The demonstration of this came when the Krillian Syndicate, a criminal organization that had operated in the shadows for centuries, decided to test the new order. They launched a series of raids against Protectorate shipping, apparently believing that humans would be too focused on governing to notice small-scale piracy. They were wrong. The entire syndicate was dismantled in a single day, not through massive military operations or lengthy investigations, but through the simple application of human technology and efficiency. Every syndicate base was located simultaneously. Every syndicate ship was captured or destroyed. Every syndicate member was arrested or eliminated. The message was clear. The human protectorate did not tolerate threats to galactic peace. "How did they find us so quickly?" asked the captured syndicate leader during his interrogation. Agent Song, hey, who had coordinated the operation, smiled politely. "We've been watching you for years. Every communication, every transaction, every movement. We knew about your organization before you made your first raid. We simply chose to let you operate." until you became a problem that needed solving. This was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of human rule for many aliens. Humans seemed to know everything that happened in their territory. Privacy, as many species had understood it, no longer existed. But surprisingly, most aliens found this comforting rather than oppressive. Crime is essentially impossible now, reported the former Quanthi World of New Collective. Everyone knows that humans are watching, that any criminal activity will be detected immediately and stopped before it can cause harm. As a result, most people don't even consider breaking the law. The galaxy had become, in many ways, the safest and most prosperous it had ever been. Admiral Park Jun stood in the command center of the human dreadnought Sejong the Great, watching as reports flowed in from across the galaxy. The ship itself was impossible. According to every alien intelligence service, humans did not have dreadnoughts. They had small patrol boats and converted cargo ships. They certainly did not have vessels that could house 50,000 crew members and carry enough firepower to level a moon. But the Sejong the Great was real, and it was only one of many. "Admiral," reported Captain Kim So, his chief of staff, "the Valari Empire has requested emergency talks. They're claiming their invasion of New Busan was a misunderstanding." Park Jun, a man in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes, nodded, slowly. "What about the other members of the Galactic Council? The Quanthi Collective is having difficulties. Half their worlds are experiencing civil unrest as individuals start questioning the hive mind. The Etherian Council has declared neutrality and closed their borders. Most of the smaller species are demanding an emergency session to discuss the human situation." Park Jun studied the tactical display floating before him. Red dots showed hostile alien fleets. Blue dots showed human forces. 6 months ago, there had been maybe a dozen blue dots in all of human space. Now there were thousands, and more, appeared every day. "Have our diplomatic people responded to the Valari request?" he asked. Ambassador Jiang Wu, Kang Wu's son, sent them a message. He told them that humans would be happy to talk. But first, the Valari need to demonstrate their peaceful intentions by surrendering their entire battle fleet. Park Jun smiled grimly. And their response? They think he was joking. He wasn't. The truth was that humans had been preparing for this war for decades. While alien intelligence services watched human colonies and counted human ships, they had missed the most important thing. Humans were very good at hiding things in places where no one thought to look. Engineer Cho Min had spent her entire career working on what appeared to be civilian mining operations. To any alien observer, she was simply a human who dug asteroids apart and extracted useful metals. What they did not realize was that for every ton of metal she extracted, she also carved out vast hidden spaces inside those asteroids. "How many ships do we have ready?" Admiral Park asked her during their secure communication. Cho Min checked her tablet, which showed the status of what she privately called her rock collection. "As of today, we have 800 fully operational vessels hidden inside asteroids throughout human space. Another 300 are currently under construction, and we can activate the entire reserve fleet within 6 hours. "Reserve fleet?" Cho Min grinned. "The 1,000 ships we built inside dead moons and abandoned space stations. The aliens never bothered to check what we were doing with our waste disposal sites." This was the secret that alien intelligence had missed. Humans did not build their military fleet in obvious shipyards. They built it inside rocks, inside empty space stations, inside the hulks of old cargo ships that appeared to be nothing but scrap metal. Every human colony had a hidden fleet. Every human trade route was guarded by invisible ships. Every piece of human space junk was potentially a disguised warship. Dr. Shin Wook, the head of human military research, had been working on this project since he was a young graduate student. Now, 50 years later, he was ready to show the galaxy what human technology could really do. "The aliens think they understand our capabilities," he explained to Admiral Park during a secure briefing. "They've seen our civilian ships. They've observed our defensive platforms. They've even captured some of our older military vessels. But they've never seen what we can build when we're actually trying." "Show me," Park said. Dr. Shin activated a holographic display that filled the command center. It showed a human ship, That looked absolutely normal. A simple cargo hauler, the kind that carried supplies between colonies. But as the hologram rotated, sections of the ship peeled away to reveal what was hidden inside. This is the Merchant of Venice, Dr. Shin explained. To alien sensors, it appears to be a civilian cargo ship with a crew of 50. In reality, it's a stealth attack vessel with a crew of 500 and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. How many ships like this do we have? All of them, Dr. Shin said simply. Every human ship in space can transform from civilian vessel to military destroyer in under 10 minutes. We've been building dual-purpose everything for decades. Admiral. Park stared at the display. The cargo ships, troop transports and supply vessels. The passenger liners, command ships and mobile bases. The research vessels, electronic warfare platforms and long-range sensor arrays. And the aliens never suspected? Dr. Shin shook his head. Why would they? We told them these were civilian ships and they looked like civilian ships. They never bothered to scan deeply enough to see what we had hidden inside them. But the most shocking revelation came from Counselor Ha Yon, who had served as a human observer on the Galactic Council for 20 years. To the alien, she was a friendly diplomat who helped with trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. In reality, she was one of the most successful intelligence operatives in galactic history. I've been documenting alien weaknesses since the day I arrived on the Council station, she reported to Admiral Park via encrypted communication. Every species has vulnerabilities they don't even know about. The Valari Empire's computer systems use a programming language that has built-in backdoors for maintenance. We've had access to their entire network for 15 years. The Quanti Collective's hive mind operates on specific frequencies that can be disrupted with the right signals. The Etherian Council's energy-based biology makes them vulnerable to certain types of electromagnetic radiation. You've been preparing for war while pretending to negotiate for peace? Admiral, every human diplomat in alien space has been preparing for war. We've mapped their military bases, analyzed their weapons, studied their tactics, and identified their critical weaknesses. We know more about alien military capabilities than they know about their own. This was the truth that terrified Elder Morden as he watched events unfold. The humans had not just been hiding ships and weapons. They had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, and they had done it while maintaining perfect relations with everyone. How long have they been planning this? Gentar asked, as they reviewed intelligence reports from across known space. Morden studied the data with growing unease. Human trade missions that had visited every important alien world. Human cultural exchanges that had given them access to alien technology and military bases. Human diplomatic relationships that had put their agents in positions where they could observe everything. I think, he said slowly, they have been planning this since before they met us. The most terrifying example of human preparation came from General Nam Q, who commanded what aliens thought was a small human defense force. In reality, he commanded a military organization that spanned dozens of star systems and included millions of personnel. The aliens never understood how human military organization works, he explained to his staff during a planning session. They looked for big obvious bases and large formations of ships. They expected us to organize like they do, with clear hierarchies and centralized command structures. But we don't work that way, added Colonel Lee Ha, his chief of intelligence. Exactly. Every human colony has its own defense force. Every human ship has military training. Every human civilian knows how to fight. We don't have a military. We are a military. Our entire species is organized for war, and we've been pretending to be civilians for 50 years. The proof of this came when the Valari Empire attempted to launch a second invasion, this time targeting the Jeju mining complex. They expected to find another lightly defended colony that could be easily overwhelmed. Instead, they found themselves facing what appeared to be the entire human fleet. Ships emerged from asteroids throughout the system. Space stations that had looked like civilian facilities revealed massive weapons arrays. Even the mining platforms turned out to be disguised military bases. Within hours, the Valari found themselves surrounded by hundreds of human vessels that should not have existed. This is impossible, Commander Thexara whispered as she stared at her tactical display. Our intelligence report said humans had maybe 50 military ships in total. Perhaps our intelligence was wrong, her aide suggested. Wrong? We've been watching human space for decades. We've cataloged every ship, every base, every military installation. But that was exactly the problem. The Valari had cataloged what humans wanted them to see. They had counted obvious military ships and ignored civilian vessels. They had identified clear military bases and overlooked mining operations. They had studied human defensive positions and missed offensive capabilities. The battle for Jeju, mining complex, was over before it began. Human ships moved with coordination that seemed impossible. They used weapons that violated known physics. They demonstrated tactical abilities that suggested they had been fighting wars for centuries instead of decades. But the most shocking thing was that they did all of this without seeming to try very hard. "Admiral," reported Captain Kim. "So after the Valari fleet retreated, our casualties?" 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council ignored the human warning. Commander Thexara stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the blue-green world of New Busan grow larger on her screens. The human colony looked peaceful and helpless, just as she had expected. "Send the demand for surrender," she ordered her communications officer. "Tell the humans they have 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel and surrender control of their world." The message went out across space. On the surface of New Busan, Lieutenant Yunhai received the transmission in the colony's defense center. She was young for a military officer, barely 30 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The Valari would have laughed if they could see her. This small, soft human was supposed to defend an entire world. Yunhai read the surrender demand twice, then walked to her communications console. She sent a message back to the Valari fleet, her voice calm and professional. "Commander Thexara, this is Lieutenant Yunhai of the New Busan Defense Force. We appreciate your offer, but we must respectfully decline. Have a nice day." On the Valari flagship, Thexara stared at her screen in disbelief. Did that human just decline our demand for surrender? "Yes, Commander," her officer replied. The message also included what appears to be a recipe for kimchi and a request for us to rate their planetary defense system on a scale of 1 to 10. Thexara's rage built slowly. Humans were supposed to be afraid. They were supposed to beg and plead. They were not supposed to send recipes and jokes. "Begin the landing," she snarled. "Show these humans what happens when they mock the Valari Empire." The first wave of Valari troops landed in the capital city of New Seoul. They expected to find terrified civilians running in panic. Instead, they found empty streets and an eerie silence. The city was completely abandoned, but every building still had its lights on. Every screen still displayed messages. Every speaker still played soft music. "Where are all the humans?" asked Captain Drackle as his soldiers spread through the empty streets. His question was answered when every street light in the city suddenly flashed bright white, blinding the Valari troops. Emergency sirens began wailing from every direction. The soft music changed to a deafening screech of feedback. In the defense center, Lieutenant Yunhai watched her screens with professional interest. "Phase 1 initiated," she said into her headset. "All civilians evacuated, all systems responding normally. Begin Phase 2. Across the city, civilian vehicles that had been parked innocently along the street suddenly roared to life. But there were no drivers inside them. The cars, trucks, and delivery vehicles moved with purpose, accelerating toward the confused Valari soldiers. Captain Drackle dove behind a building as a grocery delivery truck exploded against the wall where he had been standing. "What kind of weapons are these?" he shouted into his communicator. "They are not weapons," came the panicked reply from another soldier. "According to our scanners, these are just normal civilian vehicles, but they are moving by themselves." The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than the Valari could understand. Every vehicle on New Busan was equipped with automated driving systems. Every traffic light, every parking meter, every electronic device was connected to the planetary network, and Lieutenant Yunhai controlled that network. Meanwhile, far above the planet, something was happening to the Valari fleet that made no sense at all. ships began reporting system failures. Navigation computers started giving wrong coordinates. Weapon systems randomly powered down. Life support systems played music instead of circulating air. On the flagship bridge, Thexara watched in growing horror as her mighty fleet slowly fell apart around her. "Report," she demanded. "Commander, we are experiencing widespread system intrusions," her technology officer replied. "Someone is inside our computers, but our security systems show no signs of any attack." What the Valari did not know was that Dr. Kim Hana was sitting in a small office on the far side of New Busan, drinking tea and working at a simple computer terminal. She looked like a civilian scientist, which she was. She also happened to be one of the most dangerous cyber warfare specialists in human space. Dr. Kim had spent the last 50 years studying alien computer systems, not by stealing them or attacking them, but by simply watching how they worked when aliens visited human worlds. Every trade ship, every diplomatic vessel, every alien tourist had unknowingly taught her something new. She had learned that Valari security systems were designed to stop massive attacks, not tiny intrusions that looked like normal system maintenance. She had discovered that their computers trusted any signal that came from inside their own network. And most importantly, she had figured out that Valari programmers had a weakness for making their code look beautiful instead of making it secure. "Dr. Kim," came Lieutenant Yoon's voice through the communicator. "How are we doing up there?" Kim smiled as she typed commands that turned the Valari flagship's artificial gravity upside down. "Oh, they're having a very bad day. I've convinced their navigation system that they're actually flying backwards. Their weapons think they're in a training simulation. And their captain's personal shower is now playing opera music at maximum volume." But Dr. Kim and Lieutenant Yoon were not the only humans having fun that day. Captain Lee Dong was leading a small fleet of human ships in what the Valari would later describe as the most impossible military operation they had ever witnessed. Lee Dong's ships should not have existed. According to every intelligence report, humans had only a few dozen military vessels, all of them small and lightly armed. But somehow, Lee Dong was commanding a fleet of ships that the Valari had never seen before. The human vessels appeared out of nowhere, struck Valari supply ships with devastating precision, and then vanished before the enemy could respond. They moved faster than anything in the Valari fleet. They fired weapons that seemed to ignore shields and armor, and worst of all, they seemed to know exactly where every Valari ship would be before the Valari themselves knew. "How are they doing this?" Thexara demanded as another supply convoy disappeared in brilliant explosions. Her intelligence officer looked terrified. "Commander, we have been monitoring human space for decades. These ships do not exist in any of our records. It is as if they appeared from nothing." The truth was that Captain Lee Dong's ships had been hiding in plain sight for years. They looked like asteroids when they were not moving. They looked like space debris when they drifted through shipping lanes. They looked like absolutely nothing when they activated their stealth systems and became invisible to every known type of sensor. Elder Morden watched the events unfolding from his monitoring station in Void Watcher space. His ancient species had been observing the conflict with growing dread. What they were seeing should have been impossible. "How long have humans been preparing for this?" asked his aide, a younger Void Watcher named Gentar. Morden studied the data streaming across his screens. Human ships that should not exist. Human technology that violated every assumption about their capabilities. Human tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. "I think," he said slowly, "they have been preparing since the day they first met us." The Quanti Collective was having their own problems. Their hive mind had always been their greatest strength. Millions of individuals thinking as one, sharing knowledge instantly, coordinating perfectly. But now their perfect system was experiencing something they had never felt before. Confusion. The humans were broadcasting signals into Quanti space. Not weapons, not threats, just information. Stories, songs, jokes, random facts, philosophical questions. Normally the collective would simply ignore such noise. But these signals were designed to be irresistible to a hive mind. They posed questions that had no single answer. They told stories that could be interpreted in multiple ways. They created paradoxes that made the collective argue with itself. And slowly, carefully, they introduced ideas that made individual Quanti start thinking for themselves. The leader of this psychological operation was Dr. Lim Su, an elderly human who looked like a retired teacher, which he was. He had spent 40 years teaching human children how to think critically, how to question authority, and how to be individuals. Now he was teaching the same lessons to an alien hive mind. "How is the collective responding?" asked his assistant. "Doctor," Lim smiled as he watched his screens. "Oh, they're having their first philosophical crisis in 10,000 years. Half of them want to understand why humans tell jokes that are not funny. The other half want to know why humans ask questions that have no answers. And a few individuals are starting to wonder why they never asked these questions themselves." But it was Elder Morden who finally understood the most terrifying truth of all. As he watched human forces systematically dismantle the Valari Empire's invasion fleet, as he observed the Quanti collective argue with itself for the first time in history, as he saw impossible human ships doing impossible things, he realized what had really happened. They were never the prey, he whispered to himself. They were the predator, pretending to be prey. The old Void Watcher remembered ancient stories from his species' past. Stories about civilizations that seemed weak until they were threatened. Stories about species that chose peace until peace was no longer an option. The great hall of the Galactic Council Station buzzed with the sounds of 100 different species. Translator devices hummed as alien voices mixed together in the vast space. At the center of it all stood a single human, old and calm, waiting for his turn to speak. Kang Wu looked small next to the massive aliens around him. The Valari warriors towered over everyone with their dark red skin and sharp teeth. The Quanti representatives moved like one mind in their identical silver suits. Even the ancient Etherians, with their glowing blue skin, seemed more impressive than the simple human in his plain black clothes. But Elder Morden of the Void Watchers noticed something different about this human. The old alien had lived for thousands of years and seen many species rise and fall. There was something in the human's eyes that reminded him of very dangerous things from his past. "Honored members of the council," Kang Wu began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "I come before you today not as a beggar, but as someone who brings a warning." The Valari commander Thexara laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "A warning? From humans? What could your weak species possibly warn us about?" Kang Wu smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "My people have a saying. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. But what happens when the nail is made? Of titanium?" The hall fell quiet for a moment, then the laughter started. First from the Valari, then the Quanti, and finally from most of the other species. Only the Void Watchers remained silent. "Humans speak in riddles because they have nothing real to say," said High Thinker Zelani of the Quanti Collective. "Your species is barely 200 years old in space. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. And yet," Kang Wu said quietly, "here I stand before you all, asking you not to make a terrible mistake." Commander Thexara stepped forward, her massive form casting a shadow over the human. "Mistake. The only mistake was allowing your kind to spread beyond your home world. The Valari Empire has decided to claim the human colony worlds of New Busan, Sejong Station, and the Jeju mining complex. They are too valuable to waste on a species that cannot properly defend them." The other aliens nodded in agreement. The human colonies were rich in rare metals and perfectly placed along important trade routes. Everyone knew humans were too weak to stop any real military force. Kang Wu closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, Elder Morden felt a chill run down his ancient spine. "Commander Thexara," the human said softly, "I am going to tell you something, and I want you to remember this moment. Remember that I tried to warn you." "Warn us of what?" the Valari commander sneered. "You think we are weak because we choose peace. You think we are helpless because we ask for help instead of taking what we want. You look at us and see prey." Kang Wu's voice never rose above a whisper, but somehow everyone in the hall could hear every word. "You are making the same mistake that every predator makes. You assume the rabbit is harmless because it runs instead of fights. Are you threatening us, human? Thexara's hand moved to her weapon. No, Kang Wu said. I am begging you. Please do not enrage them. Do not wake them up. Do not make them show you what they really are. The Etherian Council member Luxandra spoke for the first time. Human, your species has been members of this council for 50 years. We have seen your military. We have seen your technology. You are not advanced enough to threaten anyone here. Kang Wu looked directly at her, and for a moment the ancient Etherian felt something she had not felt in centuries. Fear. Have you? The human asked. Have you really seen our military? Have you seen our technology? Or have you seen what we chose to show you? Elder Mordun finally spoke up. Perhaps we should listen to what the human has to say. The hall erupted in angry voices. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years suddenly agreed on one thing. The Void Watchers were being foolish. The Void Watchers grow soft in their old age, Commander Thexara declared. Humans are traders and farmers. They build schools and hospitals. They write poetry and make art. What could such a weak species possibly do against the combined might of the Galactic Council? Kang Wu nodded slowly. Yes, we build schools. Do you know what we teach in those schools? We write poetry. Do you know what our poems are about? We make art. Do you know what pictures we draw? The human's questions hung in the air like a bad smell. No one answered. We teach our children about every species in the galaxy. We write poems about the wars that came before we arrived. We draw pictures of things that happened long ago, when species like yours fought with species like mine. Kang Wu's voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. Something cold. Do you know what every human child learns about the galaxy, honored council members? Tell us, Elder Mordun said quietly. They learn that peace is a choice, Kang Wu replied, and choices can always be changed. The Quanthi representatives moved closer together, their hive mind working faster than usual. Human, you speak as if your species has hidden weapons. This is impossible. Our networks have been monitoring human space for decades. We know everything you build. Kang Wu smiled again, and this time the smile was genuinely sad. You know what we built where you could see it. But tell me, Collective, how well do you know the dark side of human moons? How carefully have you watched the empty spaces between our stars? How closely have you looked at the things we said were just rocks, floating in space? The hall fell silent again, but this time it was not the silence of laughter waiting to begin. It was the silence of predators realizing they might have made a mistake. It does not matter, Thexara said, but her voice was not as confident as before. Even if humans have hidden weapons, they are still just one species. The Valari Empire alone has 10,000 ships. The Quanthi Collective has 1 million soldiers. The combined fleets of the Council could destroy any world in a single day. Yes, Kang Wu agreed. You could destroy any world in a single day. But, tell me, Commander, how many worlds would you be willing to destroy? How many of your ships would you sacrifice? How much of your empire would you trade to defeat one small species that just wants to be left alone? Are you saying humans would fight to the death? Luxandra asked. Kang Wu looked at each of the alien representatives in turn. When he spoke, his words seemed to come from somewhere very deep and very dark. No, he said. I am saying we would fight until you wished you were dead. The human turned to leave but stopped at the edge of the platform. I will send one final message to my government. I will tell them that I tried to make you understand. I will tell them that you would not listen. And then, honored members of the council, you will learn what happens when you wake something that was sleeping. As Kang Wu walked away, Elder Mordun felt the weight of terrible knowledge settling on his shoulders. He had seen this before, long ago, when young species made the mistake of threatening old ones. He had watched civilizations fall because they could not tell the difference between peace and weakness. This is ridiculous, Commander Thexara announced. The Valari fleet moves to claim the human worlds in 3 days. Any species that tries To stop us will be considered an enemy of the Empire. The other council members nodded and began to plan. They talked about dividing human space between their empires. They discussed which colonies had the most valuable resources. They made jokes about human poetry and art. None of them noticed Elder Morden quietly leaving the hall. None of them saw him sending an encrypted message to the oldest archives of the Void Watchers. None of them heard him give a simple command. Begin deep space monitoring of human territory. Watch for things that should not be there. Record everything. We may need to remember what happened here when the historians ask how it all began. In his quarters later that night, Kang Wu sat at his communication console. His fingers hesitated over the keys for a long moment. Then he typed a short message and sent it toward Earth. They would not listen. Initiate protocol Sleeping Dragon. May the universe forgive us all. The message traveled through space at faster than light speed, reaching Earth in seconds. On the surface of humanity's homeworld, computers began to wake up. Deep space monitors activated. Hidden bases started their engines, and in the darkness between the stars, things that had been waiting began to move.